Hey guys, welcome to another show of East to West. Man, am I again excited to join you guys here for the next few minutes just to share some hope and some love, some encouragement, Chuck style. I hope the show over the years have at least encouraged you to pause to love somebody. And that's really what life is all about, is just pausing to love people and to just let them know that there's encouragement and that they're there and that you're there for them, just as Jesus, shows us. Even though in those times we can't really feel him or see him, he's still there and he's still working mightily. Like we learned today, Jesus is still there. I mean, look at Job. Job lost everything, but Job knew that if he just stayed the course and loved God, he was going to come out on the other side as pure as gold. And he did. And the end of the story is he got everything tenfold back, because even though in the hardship and the devastation, he knew that God was still a good God and that God was still on his throne and that God still loved Job. He still wanted the best for Job, even though Job was like, what in the world is going on here? I've just lost everything. Where are you, God? How many times have we cried that out in our time of sorrow and hurt? Where are you, God? Why do I feel alone in this moment? And that brings me to today. We're going to talk about First Corinthians a lot because I love that chapter. But we're going to also talk about something else that I love a lot, and that's Les Mis. And if you haven't seen it, you've got to see it, because it is a story of redemption, and it is a story of really trial by fire, by being reborn, by being made purified, even in the darkest days. So the main character is this guy named Jean Valjean. So where Les Mis picks up is he's in prison, struggling, no hope, no freedom, being called names, being mistreated, and spent 19 years in jail for such what seemed like such a minuscule crime. Stole a loaf of bread for his dying sister's son, and they put him away. And so here is this guy that feels like, man, the punishment did not fit the crime. I spent 19 years locked up for trying to do the right thing in his eyes. And so he becomes bitter. He becomes angry. And he no longer becomes Jean Valjean. He becomes the prison number 24601. That becomes his identity. His prison number becomes his identity. And how many times in our life do we label people, and do we force people to accept that label through our actions, through our words, through our hate, through our misjudgments, through our not willing to learn about that person? I just started watching a new show, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's called Transplant. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You've got to check it out. It's 2 episodes in. I'm hooked. It's just a story of this guy who came from Syria, lost everything, came to Syria with nothing but his clothes on his back and his sister. And he was a doctor in Syria, and now he's trying to become a doctor here. It's actually set in Canada, and just it's just how you see the stereotypes working out. We know from the show, watching the show, that this guy's a good guy. This guy's a great guy. He just saved 5 people, but yet he got treated like he was a perpetrator. That's the first thing that they just they just saw this guy, because he was from Syria. And how often do we just judge on appearances? And so Jean Valjean finally gets out of prison, and he's excited. Even though he's bitter and he's angry, he's excited about what this new world is going to offer him. He thinks he's going to get out, and everything is just going to be great. and everything is just going to be wonderful. And it wasn't the case. He was mistreated. He was abused. He wasn't paid like the others. He grew even more bitter because now he feels like he can't escape from that identity that was placed on him for 19 years. And all he could see was the number. He couldn't see the man anymore. All he could see was the number. And again, to relate today, how many times do we relegate people to stereotypes, to preconceived notions, and we try to keep people stuck in those preconceived notions instead of realizing who they are as a person? We try to make them realize who they are as a stereotype, as a judgment, that just does nothing to serve love. It does nothing to serve community to label people, to have a preconceived notion. Man, brothers and sisters, I've had so many great conversations with people from all over the world and people from different backgrounds and races and just every different type of life that we can encounter. I've had the privilege of being able to meet with those guys and girls and talk to them and get to know them. And boy, I'm telling you, my heart is filled with joy knowing that I got to meet with them, and instead of just judging them, I got to love them, and they got to love me. You know, when I was going through my cancer, I had so many people of just all walks of life praying for me, caring for me, you know, not writing me off, you know, just clinging and onto hope and helping me to cling on to hope. And I just loved it, and it was amazing. So Jean Valjean is now going through life, and he's broken, he's given up, he's decided love does not exist for me. It does not exist. So his bitterness has now turned into hate until one day, he meets this bishop. He meets this man of God who decided a long time ago that he was going to let 1 Corinthians rule his life. He was going to let 1 Corinthians be the foundation to the beginning of every situation that he was going to encounter. So this bishop encounters Jean Valjean and invites him in and says, "Can I get you something to eat?" Gives him the best bed to sleep in. Now, does Jean Valjean immediately go, "Oh, maybe there's hope yet"? Nope. Still skeptical, still bitter because of all those years of being told that he was worthless. He was nothing. You know, to unchip that mountain takes years. Years. Sometimes it happens in an encounter, but most times bitterness and hatred and anger takes years to chip away. Years, because it becomes an identity. It becomes, that's all we're meant to be. Well, they say it, so it must be true. At this point, Jean Valjean is saying, I'm no more than a number, so it must be true. So the bishop takes care of him, tends to him. Doesn't say how long he's with the bishop, but he just tends to him. And then Jean Valjean starts to feel something. He starts to feel this stirring in his soul, like the numbers were dropping off slowly one by one. And that a person, a human, a man was emerging out of that rubble, that mess. Now, Jean Valjean says, "I have to leave. I have to go." And the bishop's like, "Okay." So Jean Valjean falls back into his bitterness and hatred again, and he steals all this silver from the church, this priceless silver from the church. And so he gets caught, and he gets arrested. And the soldiers take him back to the bishop, and here's where 1 Corinthians kicks in. Here is how 1 Corinthians is supposed to work. First of all, let me read to you what 1 Corinthians says. 1 Corinthians says, Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not keep a grudge. Love does not keep a record. Love does not enjoy the injustice of others. Love is not boastful. Love does not seek its own. You know? So here's the bishop with a choice now. He has a choice to probably rightfully so have Jean Valjean thrown back into jail. Rightfully so. He stole. Rightfully so. But the bishop took a different approach. He took the 1 Corinthians approach. He didn't hold a grudge against Jean Valjean for stealing the stuff. And in fact, he offered him more stuff. And then when the soldiers asked him about this preposterous story to them that Jean Valjean told them about, the bishop, hey, the bishop gave me this stuff. He gave me this stuff. The bishop backed his story up and said, yes, he did. And he did it out of love because he saw Jean Valjean more than a number. He saw Jean as a man. He saw him as an opportunity to find redemption, to find Jesus in this darkness and in this hopelessness that Jean Valjean had felt, you know. And the only thing the bishop asked in return of Jean Valjean was to take the silver and become a better person. And Jean Valjean did that. He became a new creation through the generous gift of this man of God. He became a new creation. He became the mayor of this town. He had a factory. He employed hundreds of people. He just, it was like a whole new life had been reborn, you know. And then he meets Fontaine, and they go through a little bit of struggle, and then he finds out that Fontaine has a daughter named Cosette. Now, here's how love, when it's done right, here's how love goes. Because one act of love isn't solitary. I don't believe so. One moment of love is not a solitary moment. It's a moment that creates moments. And when we love somebody in their darkness and we love somebody in their moment of crisis, that love goes on for years, for generations, because Fontaine ends up dying and Jean Valjean finds Cosette and raises her as his own. So not only does he love Cosette, he saves Cosette. So because the act of a man of God who chose to live out 1 Corinthians and not hold a grudge, be kind, not be boastful, you know, set free, love, another life was spared. And so they grow up. And Cosette grows up with a father, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I mean, Jean Valjean still agonizes a little bit about his life, his former life. Not saying that all of our past hurts and wounds are going to leave us when we experience love, and it's tough. I struggle with stuff. I still struggle with a lot of stuff. But I know that where I can go to find love. I know where I can go where I can feel 1 Corinthians in my life. I know where I can go. And that's God. And it's just amazing. It's just fantastic. So Jean Valjean not only saved his own life, changed his life, but he changed the course of Cosette's life, who grows up and gets to experience life herself and gets to experience love in Marius. It's just crazy how it's just Les Mis is such a parallel journey of love that no matter how bitter and hateful our lives make us, there's always hope for love. There's always hope for and an encounter. You know, another great, awesome movie that I like to relate, is The Shawshank Redemption. Here's this guy, Andy Dufresne, put in jail for a crime he did not commit, you know, struggling with prison life, you know, but he never gives up hope. You can always see the hope in his eyes. He never gives up hope. He doesn't let the situation that he's in become his identity. He doesn't do that. He struggles, and he's always looking for hope, and always looking for hope. And towards the end of the movie, you know, he says one of the most quotes that I just love in any movie. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's either get busy living or get busy dying. And if you stay in the anger and bitterness of the situation around you or whatever, you're dying. You're dying to yourself. But if you say, you know what, that happened, sucked. Not saying that it doesn't suck, but when you start to move on and start to live again, hope will show up in the most unimaginable way. You know, so hope showed up for Andy Dufresne in the form of a rock hammer. It's a little bitty rock hammer. It basically used just to chip little rocks and to shape them. There's no way you can break out of prison with a rock hammer, or can you? So for 19 years, Andy Dufresne every night dug a hole in his wall. I mean, probably ounces a day. Ounces. He couldn't do too much because the guards could get suspicious. When he took it out to the yard, they would be like, what's in your pockets? You know what I mean? They probably did all kinds of searches. But one day he broke through. And it was on a stormy, rainy night that in the middle of this world of hopelessness and injustice and hopelessness, he crawled through 500 yards, as the narrator described it, 500 yards of unimaginable darkness, and came out clean on the other side. Andy Dufresne found escape because he held on to hope. He held on to hope. You know, he didn't just say, well, this is just the way my life is. This is the way my life has become. He said, no matter what, I cling to this idea that there's still hope in the world, that there's still hope in my life, that I can do it, that I can succeed, you know. And one of the, going back to Les Mis for a second, one of the coolest songs that I like, one of my favorite songs in there is One Day More, because it talks about the hope of one more day. You know, the hope of and the excitement of seeing what God has prepared for me one more day. You know, if we can just get to one more day and see what God has in store for us. If we can get to one more day and love on somebody. If we can get to one more day and walk alongside somebody that's struggling. Instead of walking away or walking by, let's stop and walk with these guys to help them get to their one day more. Because that's what life's really all about. Life is really about trying to get through today and get to one day more and let tomorrow be even better than today for somebody. Because when we cancel out 1 Corinthians and we say that love is not long-suffering, that love is not kind, that love boasts, you know, where's the hope in that? You know, where's hope in that? But, you know, love does not hold a grudge. You know, we got to just remember that people are imperfect and that they make mistakes towards themselves, towards us, towards the ones we love. towards strangers. We all make mistakes. If anybody can sit here and tell me, oh, I've never made a mistake, I think you need to rethink that and go back and look at day one and to now and see. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. But nevertheless, true love bears all and reminds us that one day we're also going to need to be forgiven. There's going to come a day in our life when we're going to need to say, man, will you forgive me? I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for what I did. Will you forgive me? It's like the crazy cool story in the Bible. I always like this story. This story always helps to remind me to always look back at my wounds and realize that my wounds are not as great as the wounds inflicted on Jesus. That the wounds he suffered through to heal my wounds. And it's the story of this guy who goes to this judge, and he owes like a bazillion, trillion, gazillion dollars. He owes a debt that this guy will never pay back. Never. Now some people will say, well, why did the guy let the guy get so far in debt? Because that's what a loving God is. A loving God allows us to mess up. He does. He doesn't say anything. He allows us to, but he also allows us to come back and ask for forgiveness. And so this judge had pity on this guy and said, you know what? You're all good. Forgiven. Forgiven. When Jesus died on that cross and he made the ultimate sacrifice for all of us, God looked down at us and said, all good. Forgiven. And so this guy goes out immediately outside of the courthouse and he sees his buddy. Now this guy owed a gazillion dollars, right? This buddy owed him $10. $10. And the guy said, you got my $10? And the guy said, no, I don't have it right now. So the guy beat him up over $10. Beat him up over something so meaningless. Like today, we're beating each other up verbally, physically, over meaningless things. Hate, meaningless. Anger, meaningless. Love, meaningful. Patience, meaningful. Forgiveness, triumphant. And so the judge hears about this guy who went and beat up his buddy who owed him $10. He said, no. You get that guy back in here. Get him back in here. And so he's standing before the judge and he's like, what? I thought I was forgiven. I thought I was good. Why am I back here? What's going on? And the judge says, is this true? Did I just not forgive you all of your debt? And yet, here you are beating up this guy that owes you so little. And when I forgave you who owed me so much. And the guy was like, yeah. So the guy threw him in prison. You know what I mean? He gave him his just reward. Now, when we're forgiven, and we know that we've been forgiven, and we have people that have committed errors against us, wounded us, man, we got to go find them and forgive them. Because to forgiveness is to get busy living. To hold a grudge is to get busy dying. The relationship will die. Your joy in life will die. The future promises of hope will start to die because now you're just focused on what happened instead of looking and seeing what could happen. So love forgives. Love does not have any envy. There is a well-known phrase that always says, we've all heard it, that the grass is always greener on the other side. This means that it does not matter how blessed you may be in your family, your marriage, your career, your possessions, or your department, someone may always be better off. but always just be glad where you're at. Be glad in that moment that God has put you in. Like my friend Justin said last week, and I just love it. I love it when moments hit me and it wrecks me. Like movies, I like watching movies where I learn something from. I love documentaries. I love historical films. I love movies that I can walk away and say, "Wow, I learned something from that movie." And it's just exciting. It's like, and Justin says, you know, when you know where Jesus is, don't go find a seat, find a friend. Don't be jealous of what somebody else has. Just be excited that you have an opportunity where you're at to show Jesus to people. I love doing what I do. I could have moved up. I could have been promoted, but I didn't want to. My life wasn't for that. I don't think. I think my life was for ministry and to be around as much people as I can be around. Because I love hanging out with people. I love talking to people. I like walking up to a stranger and telling them a joke. I do. I'll walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, did you hear this or did you hear that?" And they will just laugh, and just the joy of bringing a smile to someone's face. Love is not boastful. We don't get to brag about the things that we've done for God. We don't do that, because in that makes a list, and God doesn't care about a list. God cares about a heart. Love does not seek its own. When we fall in love, we forget about ourselves. We try to give instead of receiving. We serve instead of to be served. You know, it's love. This one here is one I kind of struggle with. I'll be honest with you. Love is not irritated. Sometimes I get irritated. How many of us out there get irritated by something? But when we love, we should take that irritation as an opportunity to irrigate. When we become irritated, we should try to become irrigated. And what I mean by that is we should take that moment of irritation and we should try to plant a seed in someone's life. Just draw closer to them. Oh my gosh. How many times did Jesus walk on this earth and had opportunities to be irritated? I mean, just downright, Jesus could have walked around angry, ticked off 24/7. He could have, but he didn't. He didn't do that because he walked out 1 Corinthians. He walked out every character in Corinthians. And so with closing, I just want to close with a few quotes here that I think have kind of helped me, but I hope helps you through the week. And again, just thanks for tuning in. And always remember, just if you need a guide, if you need a roadmap to life, read 1 Corinthians. Write it down on a piece of paper. Put it in your wallet. Memorize it. Because I'm telling you, it's how we walk together in life. So, the first one is from Nelson Mandela, and I'm a huge Nelson Mandela fan. I've read his autobiography. He's just a man that we're probably going to talk about next week. He just was a man who never gave up hope. Even in the darkness of his own prison, he still found ways to bring joy to people. And so one of his best quotes that I just love, it says, "May your choices reflect your hope, not your fears." And then Henry David Thoreau says, "If we will be quiet and ready enough, we shall find compensation in every disappointment." Once again, like I said, when we feel disappointed, try to find the compensation in that. How can we draw something out of that that's going to bring life into the situation? And then Anne Frank. I love Anne Frank. We're going to talk about her later on down the road. I love Anne Frank. I don't think all of the misery, but I don't think about all of the misery, but I think about all of the beauty that remains. Oh my gosh, here's this girl going through World War II, young Jewish girl, and she's not focused on the misery. She's focused on the beauty that remains because she still knows that even in the darkest of times, the sun will rise and burst forth and bring new hope and a new day into whatever situation we're going into. So I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to catch you here next week. Be sure to tune in and tell your friends to tune in next Sunday at 5:30 at www.iranapublictelevision.us. And gather your friends around and when you watch this again, just always remember, go out and make a stranger a friend, but more importantly, don't make a friend a stranger.